Yeah, hi, Alicia. Look, across this day and throughout the whole country today, we have seen Russian forces continuing to attack civilians, continuing to attack urban centres, and as such, the death toll is also rising. About 15 minutes from where we are now is a small town called Irpil, and there earlier they were shelling heavily. Thousands of people having to flee, having to cross a bombed-out bridge to get across, trying to get to the relative safety of the capital, Kyiv, where we are now. But how long the capital itself remains safe, nobody knows. And that's because Russian forces are increasing their push towards the city. And it's thought to be just a matter of time till they try to take it. Across the country, they have been besieging other cities as well. Putin's forces continue to bombard civilians. In Mariupol, a ceasefire had been announced to allow civilians to evacuate. But that fell apart almost immediately as Russian forces shelled the safe corridors out. President Zelensky had a call with senators earlier today. He reiterated he needs more weapons. He also tore into what he calls a weak NATO for refusing the no-fly zone, and he spoke about Russia's military losses.
The Russian army didn't reach its goal, though it reached almost 10,000 killed Russian servicemen. 10,000 is a horrific figure. They are boys of 18, 20 years old, very young boys, almost children. They are soldiers who had no explanation of what they were sent to fight for.
Ukrainians are doing their very best to fight back, and they've had some success. This video shows a Russian helicopter being shot down. It was released by the Ukrainians and posted with the caption, "Welcome to hell." It is giving some people hope, and as a result, we continue to see defiant scenes and hear defiant voices. There is another round of diplomacy that's just been announced by the Belarusians. That'll take place on Monday, but frankly, right now, little hope that there can be a diplomatic solution at this point. Alicia?
Ben, I have a question. When the decision came down on the no-fly zone yesterday, there was a professor who told Neil Cavuto, he looked right into the camera and said, Americans, this only delays things. This does not keep you out of getting tangled in the war, basically saying it was inevitable. What's your sense that as we watch these pictures come in, more and more horrific, day after day, of children being killed especially, that it will be inevitable that we get dragged in?
That's certainly what everyone here says. You ask any Ukrainian, they say, look, we understand your reluctance to get involved. No one wants to have a conflict with Russia, two nuclear powers. But this is coming your way. Putin only understands one thing, and that is military force. And so far, it's been nothing but appeasement. Dialogue, diplomacy hasn't worked. And at every point, he has kept going. Sanctions haven't worked. And so that's what the argument would be over here, that it needs to be a no-fly zone, or the US needs to give fighter jets, or they need to escalate in some way. They need to give more. But if the biggest threat is sanctions and they send some of these missiles over, inevitably, eventually, the sheer scale and size of the Russian armed forces, 200,000 people, yes, they may suffer some setbacks, logistical, supplies, etc., but eventually they will power on through. They will learn from their mistakes, and it's hard to stop them. So you're right. People over here are saying, please give us the no-fly zone, but they understand the reluctance not to.
Yeah, Ben, Sean Duffy here. Obviously it's outrageous that Russia is shelling women and children as they flee Mariupol. But is there a second ceasefire that's being discussed? And if so, what terms would there need to be to get Russia to comply with that ceasefire?
Yeah, time and time again, Russia has broken such ceasefires. I'm not sure of any plans at this point to announce another ceasefire or to create humanitarian corridors. It is always being discussed, and certainly that'll be on the agenda when they meet on Monday. But just as an example of how little the Russians sort of tried at the last round, they sent to those discussions a former deputy minister of culture, whereas the Ukrainians sent, a significantly senior Minister of Foreign Affairs, and everyone was shocked that the Russians were sending someone, a former minister, so lowly. So, look, they don't seem to be taking it very seriously at the moment. And you look back, and the Russians have used diplomacy time and time again to show that they are trying to plot a diplomatic path, while at the same time escalating. They did it while Lavrov was meeting with Blinken. They did it time and time again in the months leading up to that. So, look, for all the talk of humanitarian corridors, it's hard to see right now if Russia will abide by them. Russia does want, though, that being said, for civilians to flee. It serves their purposes. They can soften up targets and then they can send their troops in. They are wary of street-to-street urban fighting because they know the death count will rise then, and that can sway public opinion back home against them. But it's pretty hard right now to trust the diplomatic overtures from the Russians.
Benjamin, it's Dagan McDowell. What about, talk about the indiscriminate damage done to civilians, the use of cluster bombs or cluster munitions. There have been reports of those. Russia is not party to an international treaty that bans those types of munitions. But what have you heard or even seen in terms of Russia's use of those types of bombs?
Well, President Biden is saying there isn't enough evidence to point to that yet, but the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, yes, there is evidence that cluster bombs are being used, and we've all seen the videos that are appearing on social media. It's very clear to see when a cluster bomb is used. Multiple little flashpoints, they're indiscriminate, they wipe out large areas. Look, yes, the feeling is they are being used. And if you look back to previous engagements that Russia has been involved in, Syria, Chechnya, they were used there as well. So it's certainly in their arsenal. It's certainly they're not too concerned with human loss. We've seen that before as well. So the evidence points to the fact they are using it. And yes, those are war crimes. And there are already discussion about collecting the evidence so that there can be prosecutions later down the line. But again, that's hardly something that is going to scare off Vladimir Putin at this point.
Benjamin, Joey Jones here. I know that we've talked a lot today. We were talking, I think, 12 hours ago, actually, about what was happening in the south around Mariupol and those corridors. But right there where you are in Kyiv, looking at a map earlier today, it looks like there are battles in towns due west of Kyiv. And I know that most of the Russian troops had come from the north and northwest. Does that mean they're beginning to circle the city? And is that something that you're seeing Ukrainians react to? Is there any engagements happening that kind of show that corridor to the west, where we hope to be able to bring weapons into Kyiv, is being cut off?
The only corridor into the city right now here is through the south. The west is already cut off. There are no safe routes in there. And yes, there are clashes up and down the western side. People are quite surprised, frankly, that they haven't moved around and cut off the south already. We talk about this convoy again and again and why it stalled. The thought was that was going to go down and do it. People are now closely watching troops, Russian troops moving from the northeast as well, coming down to the eastern side of the city. So there is definitely a move to cut them off on both sides. Look, it's all speculation. Why haven't they moved on Kyiv yet? Perhaps some people are suggesting that they want to secure land around in the east, the north, the south, Mariupol, Kharkiv, Kherson. Perhaps it's more important initially to capture the Black Sea coastline. They appear to be moving towards Odessa, which is a key port city. So, look, it's very hard to read right now. It does appear as if at the very beginning, Putin hoped and the Russian forces hoped they could go down very quickly and capture Kyiv, a decapitation strike. Now that that hasn't worked, they've sort of regrouped, taken a step back, and we're not quite sure when that attack on the city might come. And that's why it is just such an eerie place to be right now. It's a city usually of 3 million people. There is no one on the streets, no one except the soldiers who are ready with their tank traps, their sandbags, their concrete barriers. People are not leaving. It is a strange place to be, an eerie place to be, people bracing for what they consider an inevitable attack. And Vladimir Putin has made it clear that if they encounter resistance, they will come in with the full force of the army. They are going to encounter resistance here. Every single person is going to pick up a weapon and fight as hard as they can. That's largely to do with the leadership of President Zelensky, who has been remarkable. He has galvanized the public's support, and as such, they are going to be here. They are going to fight, and the fear is this is going to be a very brutal, very bloody urban warfare, preceded by softening up by missiles and other artillery.
Benjamin Hall, thank you so much for answering all of our questions and giving us the analysis. Benjamin Hall in Kyiv, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.